But we begin tonight with new figures showing record inflation in the U.S. The inflation rate hit a 40-year record in June. Consumer prices increased by 9.1% over the last 12 months. According to the Department of Labor, prices went up for food, rent, and medical care. For more on inflation, Jeff Mason and Colby Smith join us now. Jeff is a White House correspondent for Reuters, and Colby is the U.S. economics editor for the Financial Times. Jeff, the White House has put out a statement calling the latest inflation report, an economic report, quote, unacceptably high, but it claims the inflation rate does not reflect decreases in gas prices. Walk us through the administration's response.
Well, what's interesting, Robert, is the administration has started to respond to this even before the numbers came out. You had Brian Deese, President Biden's top economic advisor yesterday, and others from his economic council saying, look, these numbers are going to be bad, but they don't reflect the latest. And one of the reasons is the one that you just mentioned, that gasoline prices have actually come down. They were averaging over $5 a gallon last month, and now they're below that on average. Although as I was just walking home tonight, I still saw some that were over $5. So I think consumers are obviously still really, really feeling the pinch and the hit of high fuel prices, of high rents. And that creates a political problem for President Biden. And that's why, as you said in that statement, they are calling this unacceptably high while also trying to say it's not going to stay this bad. It is going to get better. We are seeing some progress, at least on the energy side, in the last few weeks.
Sharp points. Colby, break down these latest numbers for us. How is 9.1% inflation affecting the American people and their ability to pay for food and other essential items?
It's having an absolutely major impact for Americans here across the board. It's not just energy prices, as you mentioned, it's food as well, and across most goods and services, frankly. So a report like this one is pretty disastrous. Not just for Americans, but for the Biden administration as well. And it's simply because we're just seeing this firming of prices across the board. And the worrisome sign is, while we might see some moderation in energy prices, and we've already seen that, especially with gas prices in particular and some commodities, the issue is that we have core prices, so those stripping out those volatile items like food and energy and other services-related inflation, really firming in this past month. And that's a very alarming sign, both for the administration and for the Federal Reserve, which has really ramped up the aggressiveness in which it's raising interest rates in order to restore price stability.
Jeff, the Biden administration's response to inflation has mostly focused on bringing down energy prices, gas prices. But what is the administration doing to try to cut prices across the board beyond just that?
Well, there's not that much that they can do, although they are calling on Congress to do more. They have said that the president's agenda, what was formerly known as Build Back Better, would help bring down prices. So they're working on that, but they also have a pretty big reliance on the Fed. And Colby just mentioned the Fed. One of the offshoots, or one of the results of today's really bad numbers, is the Fed will almost certainly raise interest rates 0.75 points at the end of this month, perhaps an entire point. So there's some talk about that in the market today, which will have an even bigger impact on consumers as well. It will drive up the cost of borrowing. It will be felt in their pocketbooks as well. So politically, it's rough. To your initial question, the president is trying to say we're working on this, but his hands are at least partially tied. And that is not an argument that sells well, and it's certainly not an argument that Republicans are accepting.
Colby, let's stick with the Federal Reserve for a moment. For a layperson who doesn't understand monetary policy in the way someone who's a top editor at the Financial Times might, what can the Fed do here for the average working person to try to alleviate the economic pain?
So the Fed's tools, while they're the most direct way in which a policymaker can impact inflation here, actually faces a quite limited impact to a certain extent as well, given the nature of the inflation shock. So where the Fed is most effective is through the demand channel, meaning by raising interest rates, it increases the cost of borrowing, which therefore potentially changes people's plans to invest in certain items, to make big ticket purchases, let's say to buy a home if mortgage prices are rising. So that's the way in which the Fed is trying to impact the inflation story to date. But the big problem is that much of this inflation is in fact supply driven. We've had huge spikes in energy costs, food prices, and other commodities. And at the same time, we still have these lingering COVID lockdowns across the globe, and of course, another uptick in cases as well in the U.S. and around the world. And what that is really doing is gumming up supply chains, which is keeping upward pressure on prices. So this leaves the Fed in a bit of a conundrum here because its tool is quite blunt. And so what it's forced to do is raise interest rates quite dramatically in order to affect the parts of the economy in which demand is quite high. But that risks really jeopardizing not only the labor market, but a lot of people that are still struggling under the weight of the pandemic and high prices in particular.
And Colby, a lot of people tonight are looking at their bank accounts and their wallet and trying to wonder, as they look ahead down the calendar, whether they have enough money for a vacation or a trip in the fall or to pay for a college semester. I know there's a diversity of views, but what's the consensus among economists about where the inflation rate is going to go between now and, let's say, the end of the year?
I think the expectation at this point is that we will see an eventual moderation. You are going to get that easing up of energy inflation in light of the fact that gas prices and energy prices more broadly, as we've already mentioned, have already come down to a certain extent. But the real question is not necessarily when we're going to see a peak in inflation, but where inflation is going to settle. And I think that's the big open-ended question for economists at the moment, because in a report like we saw in June, we have the firming of several categories across goods and services, which is really going to counteract some of that rolling over in inflationary pressures on the energy side. So I think the expectation is that inflation is going to settle far higher than this 2% goal that the Fed targets, and it could be anywhere upwards of 3 or 4%.
Jeff Mason, Colby Smith, thank you very much.